Good evening. Our top story tonight centers on a chilling family tragedy in Troy, Illinois. In a case that has gripped the community, 46-year-old Neil Howard has been convicted of first-degree murder for the death of his 60-year-old mother, Norma Caraker. On a quiet evening in Troy, Illinois, a single phone call shattered the routine of a close-knit community. A concerned family member's urgent call to emergency services set in motion an investigation that would soon expose deep fractures within a family once thought to be ordinary. When first responders arrived at the modest home on Lower Marine Road, the grim discovery left little room for ambiguity. Norma Caraker was found lifeless, with a bungee cord tightly secured around her neck. This stark and unsettling detail would soon become the cornerstone of an investigation that meticulously reconstructed the tragic sequence of events. Norma Caraker was a familiar figure to the residents of Troy, renowned for her steadfast commitment to the community and her unwavering kindness. She had long been seen as a pillar of strength. After the death of her husband, a man who had once served as Troy's mayor, Norma had begun to rebuild her life. Embracing the possibility of new beginnings, she sought companionship and a return to normalcy. For many in the community, her resilience was nothing short of inspiring. Yet behind closed doors, a painful transformation was taking place, one that would eventually tear apart the fabric of her once peaceful household. In the years leading up to that fateful night, Norma's son, Neil Howard, had been living in the basement of the family home. Once quiet and reserved, Neil's behavior had gradually changed in noticeable ways. Neighbors recalled him as a man who had once maintained a low profile, but over time, his demeanor shifted. His increasing isolation, erratic conduct, and frequent visits to local bars where alcohol flowed freely began to raise concerns among those who had known him. What might initially have been dismissed as personal struggle soon evolved into a pattern of agitation and deep-seated resentment, a complex web of emotions that simmered dangerously beneath the surface. Eyewitnesses later recalled that in the weeks preceding that disastrous night, unusual disturbances became more frequent around the Caraker residence. Some residents mentioned overhearing raised voices echoing through the quiet night, while others observed Neil pacing the driveway with an expression of unmistakable distress. Though these observations might have been dismissed by some as mere domestic discord, they painted an increasingly troubling picture of a household under severe strain. On the evening of September 12, 2023, Norma Caraker made a decision symbolic of her desire for autonomy and renewal. She stepped out for a date. It was an effort to reclaim the life she had once led, to seek joy and connection after years of loss. However, as she returned home later that night, the atmosphere at the residence was anything but welcoming. Reports from that evening indicate that Neil, who had spent his time consumed by alcohol and wrestling with long-held grievances, was already waiting in the shadowy corridor. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a silent omen of the violence that lay ahead. In what witnesses later described as a sudden and violent outburst, long-accumulated tension exploded into a confrontation that would irrevocably alter the lives of everyone involved. As Norma crossed the threshold of her home, an argument ignited almost instantaneously. Within moments, Neil seized a bungee cord, a seemingly innocuous household item, and, in an act of unspeakable brutality, used it to strangle his mother. The sheer ruthlessness of the act was underscored by subsequent forensic analysis, which revealed that the bungee cord had been applied with a precision consistent with manual strangulation. Every detail, from the position of the cord to the distribution of force, was documented meticulously by investigators, laying bare the horrifying nature of the crime. Immediately following the confrontation, Neil made a distressing call to 911 around 1:30 a.m. on September 13, 2023, reporting that his mother was unresponsive. Emergency services arrived promptly, and the Troy Police Department acted with a level of precision born out of years of training. The scene was secured with utmost care. Every detail, from the arrangement of the bedding to the exact positioning of the bungee cord, was painstakingly recorded. Forensic specialists, experts in their field, collected samples and preserved items for laboratory analysis, fully aware that even the smallest piece of evidence could prove pivotal in reconstructing the timeline of events. In the early stages of the investigation, Neil Howard's statements were fraught with inconsistencies. At one point, he claimed to have witnessed an unidentified individual fleeing the scene, a claim that was quickly undermined by the secure nature of the home. With every entry point locked from the inside and no signs of forced entry, the possibility of an external intruder was effectively ruled out. The discrepancies between his statements and the physical evidence soon shifted suspicion squarely onto him, setting the stage for a thorough examination of every available detail. As news of the incident spread, local media outlets wasted no time in reporting the grim story. Headlines across Troy were stark and factual. A son had taken his mother's life using a bungee cord. This blunt narrative, rooted entirely in documented events, ensured that public discourse remained grounded in verifiable facts rather than conjecture or sensationalism. The clarity of the media's coverage served as a counterbalance to any attempts at narrative distortion. Investigators then turned their attention to the digital footprint left behind in the immediate aftermath of the incident. Phone records, text messages, and various digital communications from within the household were scrutinized with the aim of establishing a precise timeline. These records painted a picture that increasingly contradicted Neil's initial accounts. Multiple phone calls and text messages were logged within minutes of the altercation, creating an undeniable digital trail that placed Neil at the heart of the unfolding events. Each digital artifact, from the timestamps on messages to the call logs, reinforced the emerging narrative and further discredited any claims of passivity or external interference. As the physical and digital evidence mounted, forensic teams assumed a central role in the investigation. The bungee cord, now the primary piece of evidence, was subjected to rigorous laboratory testing. DNA samples were extracted, and microscopic analysis of the cord's fibers confirmed its role in the fatal act. Forensic pathologists conducted detailed examinations of Norma Caraker's injuries, revealing characteristic patterns that were consistent with sustained manual strangulation. Their clinical assessments, grounded in decades of forensic expertise, left little room for alternative interpretations. Each piece of evidence, meticulously collected and analyzed, contributed to an incontrovertible case against Neil Howard. At this juncture, a critical question emerged. How could a community, once so tightly woven by shared history and mutual respect, allow internal strife to culminate in such irreversible tragedy? This was not posed as an exercise in speculation, but as a call for understanding, a plea for a deeper examination of the consequences of unchecked familial discord. The tragedy compelled viewers to consider the vital importance of early intervention and the need for robust support systems to address domestic conflicts before they escalate into violence. As the investigation progressed, interviews with neighbors, extended family members, and community leaders began to surface, each adding layers of detail to the overall narrative. Multiple eyewitness accounts corroborated the growing consensus of escalating tension within the Caraker household. Neighbors recalled evenings filled with loud, unsettling arguments. Acquaintances noted Neil's visibly agitated demeanor during his sporadic appearances in the neighborhood. And close friends of Norma spoke of her recent efforts to rebuild her social circle, efforts that, in the end, proved tragically futile. Every testimony, every recollection of discord, served to construct a timeline that was both comprehensive and damning. The investigative team compiled detailed reports that integrated physical evidence, digital records, and first-hand testimonials, reconstructing that fateful night with near-surgical precision. What had once been a quiet suburban home had been transformed into a living case study of modern forensic investigation. Every element of the scene was documented to ensure that no question would remain unanswered, a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth by those charged with upholding justice. Law enforcement officials underscored the importance of systematic investigative techniques throughout the process. In cases such as these, every fragment of evidence, no matter how small, plays a critical role in uncovering the truth, one investigator remarked. Such sentiments resonated not only with those directly involved in the case, but also with an audience increasingly aware of the power of modern forensic science. The case served as a stark reminder that objective, evidence-based investigation is the cornerstone of modern criminal justice, capable of bringing clarity to even the most complex tragedies. With the investigative phase drawing to a close, the focus shifted to the courtroom, a setting where truth and accountability would be pursued with unwavering rigor. The case was presented before a panel of impartial jurors in a trial marked by meticulous attention to detail. Every piece of evidence, from the physical remnants at the scene to the digital trails captured in phone records, was laid bare before the court. Prosecutors began by recounting the discovery of Norma Caraker's body, emphasizing the significance of the bungee cord as the fatal instrument of the crime. Their narrative was systematic and unyielding, built on a foundation of hard evidence and objective testimony. Forensic experts took to the stand to deliver in-depth testimony regarding the laboratory analysis conducted on the cord. They explained in clear and measured terms that DNA traces and fiber analyses left little doubt about the cord's involvement in the act of manual strangulation. Their clinical assessments, free from conjecture or emotional influence, lent an air of indisputable authority to the proceedings. Renowned forensic pathologists further testified about the specific injury patterns observed on Norma Caraker's neck, confirming that the nature of the injuries was consistent with prolonged manual strangulation, a conclusion reached only after exhaustive comparison with known forensic data. Digital forensic specialists were equally thorough. They detailed the process of recovering and analyzing data from phone records and text messages, demonstrating how erratic communication patterns and precise digital timestamps constructed a clear narrative of Neil Howard's movements on that fateful night. Each digital artifact was meticulously linked to the established timeline, reinforcing the prosecution's case and leaving little room for alternative interpretations. The objective scientific presentation of evidence in the courtroom left the jury with a comprehensive, interconnected narrative that pointed unambiguously toward guilt. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution, the defense sought to reframe the narrative. They argued that Neil Howard's actions were not the result of premeditation, but rather the outcome of a spontaneous, emotionally charged response. A tragic, isolated moment born of decades of familial strife and compounded by the influence of alcohol. The defense contended that the incident, however tragic, was the result of cumulative emotional distress rather than a calculated act of murder. Yet every attempt by the defense to inject alternative interpretations was systematically countered by the cold, hard data of forensic analysis and the digital timeline, which together rendered their arguments largely untenable. After weeks of intense testimony and detailed evidence presentation, the case was left in the hands of the jury. With deliberate care, the jurors weighed the incontrovertible evidence against the defense's claims. During their deliberations, questions arose. Could the relentless march of modern forensic science truly capture the full complexity of human behavior in a single definitive narrative? The answer, as reflected in the eventual verdict, lay in the unassailable logic of the evidence. The jury returned a decision that was unequivocal. Neil Howard was found guilty of first-degree murder. This verdict was not merely a legal formality. It was a testament to the painstaking work of investigators, forensic experts, and legal professionals who had left no stone unturned in their quest for truth. Following the guilty verdict, the proceedings moved to the sentencing phase. Presiding with a solemn understanding of the gravity of the crime, the judge reviewed the entire body of evidence and considered the recommendations of both the prosecution and the defense. In weighing the premeditated nature of the crime against the overwhelming forensic and testimonial evidence, the judge pronounced a sentence intended to serve as both retribution and a deterrent. Neil Howard was sentenced to 31 years in prison, a term that resonated deeply within the community of Troy. The sentence stood not only as a legal judgment, but also as a symbol of the community's collective resolve to confront and learn from this heart-wrenching tragedy. Beyond the walls of the courtroom, the ramifications of this case reverberated throughout Troy and even beyond its borders. The tragedy of Norma Caraker's death and the subsequent conviction of her son ignited a broader dialogue about the societal factors that contribute to domestic violence and the critical importance of early intervention. Community leaders, law enforcement officials, and mental health advocates convened to discuss practical measures to prevent such tragedies from reoccurring. Town hall meetings and community forums were organized, during which local citizens and experts deliberated on strategies to identify and support individuals in distress before conflicts could escalate into violence. This case also prompted an introspective examination of the role that modern forensic science plays in the administration of justice. The sophisticated techniques employed to collect, analyze, and interpret evidence not only led to a conviction, but also underscored the potential of science to illuminate even the darkest corners of human behavior. It raised important questions about the integration of technological advancements in criminal investigations and the ongoing need for rigorous, objective methodologies in a field often shrouded in emotional complexity. For those who have followed this detailed narrative, the message is clear. Our communities depend on objective, evidence-based reporting and a commitment to transparency in both law enforcement and the judicial process. By engaging with content that is firmly grounded in verifiable facts, viewers not only honor the memory of those affected by such tragedies, but also contribute to a broader culture of accountability and continuous improvement in public safety. As we conclude this in-depth exploration of one of Troy's most heart-rending cases, we are left with a series of profound questions that extend beyond the particulars of this case. How can society better identify the early signs of familial discord before they escalate into irreversible violence? What role can community engagement and mental health support play in preventing future tragedies? And perhaps most importantly, how can each of us contribute to building a safer, more informed community? These questions serve not as mere reflections, but as a call to action, a reminder that the pursuit of justice and truth is an ongoing process that demands vigilance, empathy, and a collective commitment to transparency. In supporting independent investigative journalism and engaging in robust public discourse, viewers play an integral role in ensuring that the lessons of the past inform the actions of the future. Thank you for joining us in this comprehensive, objective exploration of a case that has not only reshaped the narrative of a community, but has also underscored the enduring power of truth and justice. Your engagement, whether through thoughtful discussion, sharing this account with others, or supporting quality journalism, ensures that the memory of Norma Caraker is honored and that her story serves as a catalyst for positive change. In contemplating this tragedy, we are reminded of how delicate the ties that bind us truly are, and of the significant fallout when those ties are severed. Let this case serve as a warning and a rallying call for prompt intervention, empathetic support, and a steadfast commitment to justice. Only by working together can we hope to avert future tragedies and create a community where every person feels secure, valued, and truly heard. How can each of us play our part in ensuring that such a tragedy is never repeated? The answer lies in fostering open dialogue, championing mental health initiatives, and holding our institutions to the highest standards of integrity and transparency. As citizens, our active participation and vigilance are essential in creating an environment where truth prevails and every voice is valued. Thank you for standing with us in the pursuit of justice and for contributing to a culture that prizes truth, accountability, and the well-being of our communities. Your engagement today makes a difference in the ongoing effort to safeguard our future and to honor the memory of those we have lost. If this investigation has captured your attention and you're ready for more in-depth stories that challenge the status quo, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the bell icon to be notified when our next update drops.